Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast number 214. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the morning of Saturday, April the 3rd, from the James Strong Studio in Western St. Charles County. My guest today, he's been on the show many times, but not in this respect. His name is Kieran Gutting. He's a financial planner. His company is Planning with Kieran, but we're not going to talk about money this time like we've talked about in the past. Welcome to the podcast, Kieran Gutting.
Well, good morning, James. How are you?
I'm great. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter to you and yours as well.
And I wanted to do a podcast. As I was thinking about earlier in the week, as I was thinking about what do we want to do on the podcast this weekend. I thought, well, Easter week is coming up. This is Holy Week. How can we do an Easter podcast? Well, I thought about you. And once upon a time, before you became a financial planner, before you started planning with Kieran, your company, you went to India. And not so much as a tourist, but as a servant working for the same order, I forget the name, but Mother Teresa's people, helping the poor and desolate of India, correct?
That's correct, yes. Mother Teresa started the Missionaries of Charity and world headquarters, because they all are all over the planet. World headquarters is in a place at the time was known as Calcutta, India, now known as Kolkata, in West Bengal, India. Yes.
Now, why did a young man from a middle-class family in greater St. Louis metropolitan area decide to go to India? I mean, why did you do this?
That's a great question. And as always, a lot of times when we do things in our life, or when you see other people doing things in their life, it's always important to remember who they were at that time and where they were at that stage of life. This was 97, so I was 28 years old. I was single. I was working a job, not a career, a job. I had been dating this gal that I was head over heels in love with. She, not so much, and she let me know that. And I reconsidered a lot of things in my life, and I decided I really wanted to change, and I didn't want to be the same person. And I always had a calling inside of me to help other people. And you can do a lot of that right here in the St. Louis area where I lived and live currently. There's tons of opportunities throughout the United States, but I knew me, and I knew I needed to get way out of my box. So I went and I talked to different people around town and different organizations, and there were opportunities if you could make a 2-year commitment, which I was not willing to do. There was opportunities if you had background in medicine, which I didn't. There were opportunities if you had backgrounds in agriculture, which I didn't. There's opportunities, especially in Africa, if you spoke French, which I don't. And then somebody said to me, I was at Catholic Charities, and they said, Mother Teresa's got some sisters here in town. Why don't you go talk to them? But they're a little hardcore. I thought, why not? I got nothing else to do.
Okay.
So I called up, spoke to Sister Monorama, made an appointment with them, and they were off of North Grand. They're actually located, if anybody out there knows St. Louis at all and knows where the original Sportsman's Park was, the original Busch Stadium, off of Grand Avenue and Dodier, down by the Matthews Dickies Club today. They're in that neighborhood. And I went and I knocked the door. She answered the door. And James, I don't know if you ever have had this experience in life. I knew within 30 seconds, whatever she was selling, I was buying.
Really?
And I just knew everything. It just was crystal clear. And I knew this is what I'm supposed to do. And this was the summer. This was like July. And she said, don't go now. Wait a few months. It'll be cooler. It's going to be insufferably hot there. And so I decided, and I went in November of 97. And I didn't know how long I was going to stay, but Mother Teresa was willing to take you as you are. Whatever skill set you have, great. However long you want to stay, great. You want to stay for a month and you leave after 2 weeks, fine. You want to stay, they'll take you as you were. It's all on your own dime. You're going to pay to fly yourself. You're going to pay to house yourself. You're going to pay to feed yourself. And we're just going to give you an opportunity to serve some of the poorest of the poor. And I thought that was great. And that's what I did. Hopped on an airplane and hopped off in Calcutta, India.
Now, I love talking about logistics of things. How does one get from St. Louis to Calcutta, India? I mean, you don't take the direct flight via Southwest. I know that, but it probably took a day or more to get there.
Yeah, it took the better part of a day. I flew St. Louis to Chicago, and then Chicago to Heathrow, London.
Mm-hmm.
And in and out of Heathrow, unbelievably quick. I think I was only in Heathrow for maybe a couple hours. And then flight to Delhi, which was about as long as if I remember right, that was about as long as the Chicago to London flight,
mm-hmm.
which I think was somewhere around 7 or 8 hours. Then touchdown in Delhi, do customs, do all that, go from the international terminal to the domestic terminal, and then waited there about 6 hours and caught an early morning flight. And what happens is when you land in Delhi at the time, you land you're in the international terminal. It's all very quiet, very calm. There's not a lot of people there. It's nighttime. You do customs, etc. And then you step outside because you have to go over to the domestic terminal. And welcome to India. There are throngs of people lined up. There are guys with turbans. There are kids. There's this. There's that. There's a smell in the air that you've never smelled before. There's a mass of people. It is just going from serenity into 100% adrenaline. 48 people that are willing to carry your bags, none of which I'm prepared for. Finally, I realized the thing I needed to do was get somebody to carry my bags because otherwise I'm going to keep getting asked. And they took my bags to wherever the shuttle was to shuttle me over to the domestic terminal. But it was the equivalent of serenity, 100% adrenaline, boom, just by walking through that door. And welcome to India. Then you fly to Calcutta. The airport is located in an area known as Dum Dum, which I found very ironic because I was wondering if that was me showing up. and then you take I was told you take a prepaid taxi from the airport. You go in, you have a taxi stand like many airports, most airports, and you pay a prefixed amount to get to where you want to go. And I was told the standard rate, and this was also welcome to India in 97, it'll be whatever the meter says times 2. Just double the meter. That's what it is. So that's what I did. Took about a 45-minute cab ride and to this hotel I'd been recommended by the nuns to stay at because it was right across from Mother Teresa's, and it'd be a good place to center, and that's what I did. And I went there and found myself in Calcutta.
well, a couple of things I want to discuss. I mean, people have read magazines, read books, seen movies, seen documentaries, and so the hustle and bustle, for lack of a better word, the almost anarchy and chaos in an area like that. But the one thing that you mentioned that you cannot get from a movie or a book or a documentary is you mentioned, and I've had this in developing nations as well, is the smell. Describe that, please. Yeah. Describe that, please, for those who don't know what you're talking about.
Kind of like if you've ever walked into a tire store down near a brewery, the whole air smells differently.
Mm-hmm.
But you walk into this, and it's just a smell, I think, of mass humanity,
mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
It just is. Because there's people cooking food around the corner that you don't see. There's people sweating. There's people who've been working for 10, 12, 14 hours. There's people who just showered and are just starting their day. But it's just this, I think it's the smell of mass humanity really strong.
That's a good way to put it, because I've had that experience in 4 different places, and that's Hong Kong, Guangzhou, China, Manila, Philippines, and what's the fourth? Oh, Bangkok, Thailand. And they're all different. I mean, Hong Kong smells like the whole city smells like coriander, if you can imagine that. Bangkok smells like kind of what you're talking about there, okay? Not a bad smell, but just a smell of humanity, people.
Yeah.
Same with Metro Manila. Guangzhou, China, to be quite honest, it smelled like, and I've mentioned this before, it smelled like you just walked into the bathroom on Thanksgiving Day after Uncle Shuli had been in there for 20 minutes. Let's just say that. Okay? That's what Guangzhou smelled like the whole time. It smelled like poo. So you get these different smells when you have this many people.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And it's the crowding. It's the, there is no space. There's no solitude.
And it's almost like the people are rude, but they're not rude. I mean, because they bump into you, they push you, but it's not because the rude is just you've got so many human bodies in a very confined area. And if you're not a little bit aggressive, you're not going to get anywhere.
That's 100% correct. Yeah. I remember being at a train station in Calcutta, and there's a desk you walk up to for, I don't know, information, maybe tickets or something. Well, as we're used to in North America, and you line up. Well, no, there you have a mass push of everybody getting up to the front.
Right.
Almost like you used to have at rock and roll concerts years ago where people would be rushing the stage, this push to get up front, this push to get there. Yeah.
Now, with India being a former British colony, part of the crown once upon a time, I don't know if they're a commonwealth now or not. But
no, they're all themselves.
Okay, but you still have the British influence over there, correct?
You do, which made it easy for me because what you had, especially in Calcutta, because Calcutta had an enormous British presence, was the ease of English. Everybody spoke English. It was easy, and if this person didn't speak English, the next person did, and you were going to be able to get things figured out.
Yeah,
and that made it enormously easier for me.
I would imagine so. Now, when you got to Calcutta, when you were dropped off at the hotel, or maybe when you made your first call to Mother Teresa, at what time did you think to yourself, "What in God's name have I gotten into?"
About day 3. About day 3, because the first day, you're just kind of in shock. You're like, okay, all right. And then it starts. And I went over, I think that first day, and in the afternoon, in fact, I know it was, and I'd been given directions to register as a volunteer because you had to register with them. Something I found out a lot about later because I became a volunteer for doing registration. You had to register, you give your name, your address, your religion. They asked for religion. I thought, boy, that's weird. I guess they want to know how many Catholics, and I'm a Catholic, they have working for them. No. It was the Indian government that mandated that, and the Indian government wanted to know the religion. But I went and registered, and I found out that the thing to do was tomorrow morning was show up right across the street from the hotel at Mother Teresa's and be there, and you'll figure it out. So I got there, and you got given a cup of hot tea, really hot tea, in a metal cup. So the challenges that come with that, and a banana. And then you met other volunteers, and you could go to different places to work. You could go to the Shushi Bhavan, which was an orphanage. But because they've had problems there, it was women only, which was really the way it should be, because there were some, as always happens, the losers and the creeps find ways, and it had attracted some creeps, and they cut that off right at the base, and women only, and that was great. And then there was an opportunity to work at one of 2 homes for sick and dying destitutes. One was Kaligut, which is generally the one that's been written about strictly because the first people to write about Mother Teresa was the first home for sick and dying destitutes she opened, and that